This video is brought to you by Repella Fella, a point-and-click adventure game set in a futuristic post-apocalyptic Australia. I think fans of the Stickmin series are really going to enjoy this one, with its outrageous and unexpected outcomes, branching options, and multiple endings. But it is a little less G-rated than Henry. I'm very excited to be publishing this one. It is a spiritual successor to the Flash Classic series Ray, so again, if you like supporting old Flash creators like Puffballs and Innersloth, then Repella Fella is cut from that same cloth. Cut from the same sloth? I'll have links down below, please do check that out. How's it going, everyone? My name's Graham, welcome to Two Left Thumbs, and the final part of finding the references. Going through everything that was missed in those 4 completing the mission videos. Honestly, this isn't as long of a video as I thought it would be, but it was still a lot of work, still very intimidating. So thank you once again to Fruz for taking on the editing. I can't stress enough how much this video might never have happened if they didn't step up and do the editing work. They deserve some love passed their way, absolutely go check out their channel. There are plenty of fantastic videos already, and I know a couple others that are planned that fans of the Henry series are bound to love. And finally, we can move forward to completing the mission. It's the largest game, so obviously it has the most missed references, and it also seems to mark a point in time where Puff was more often pulling from modern games, so he and I didn't as frequently have overlaps in what we grew up with that I immediately recognized in the prior installments. So all of your help through this section was so greatly appreciated. One that's not even a reference, but just an amazing gag early on is at the top at base. There is this large landing pad that instead of having an H for helicopter is marked A for airship. That's just too funny not to point out. The jetpack option is from Apex Legends. The colored smoke is already a fairly clear connection, but the swerving drop pattern is an actual in-game tactic as well. We hear a fragment of a conversation.
Message to all recent players, I'm hosting a 10th Prestige.
This is a reference to a 10th Prestige, a game type in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 that normally requires real-life currency to get in. Knowing Henry's money status, it's only natural that he'd grown at the idea. He came out of nowhere is commonly associated with WWE wrestler Randy Orton when using his signature move, the RKO, where he grabs his opponent, sometimes out of midair, and slams them down. When creating the remaster, Innersloth had to create hundreds of original sound effects, replacing anything that would have had copyright issues. It makes sense that they would then reuse some effects for their other game, Among Us. Maybe you guys have heard of it? There are dozens of examples of common sounds between the two games, but the main one that is used as an actual direct reference is with the keypad hack sound, which is the same as the keypad swipe fail sound in Among Us.
I think I can hack this panel to get the door to open. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing.
The fail text being bruh is likely Puff commenting on Among Us players with a genuine shock at them failing, since the card swipe is generally considered one of the easiest tasks. The character Floyd Winters is a play on Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber. His bio mentions his friend Harry, which is the actual name of Jeff Daniels' character in those movies. That one didn't have a little twist put on it the way that Floyd and Lloyd did. Having golden weapons at the end of Cleaned 'Em Out is mostly just to show how lavishly wealthy these criminals are, but Puff did mention on stream that the gold pistols are a soft reference to Killer Bean, but he left the dragon design off. The character who holds these golden deagles is Terrence Suave, whose name is a reference to the old movie Master of Disguise. One of the disguises used is a character named Terry Suave. Puff states that he thought everyone would get this reference, and no one did. I think I saw that movie like 3 times growing up and never again since. The only thing I remember about it is the Turtle Club. I think that's the only thing anyone remembers from that movie.
Am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?
During Puff's commentary stream, he decided that the patch in the vault belongs to Metal Gear's Big Boss. It did seem like he decided in that moment, since there's nothing very identifiably specific about this patch, it could have applied to many characters, but we're locking in Big Boss. The best guess I have for where the ship name USS Bomi comes from is that Bomi is an anagram of Moby, like Moby Dick. I've found no better explanation than that. It was suggested quite a few times in the comments that the song the top bot dances to is a rendition of JonTron's theme.
Look at me. I am the dancing robot. Oh yeah.
It always feels kind of strange to talk about things that aren't a reference, but when something gets suggested so often, it is helpful to have Puff step in and say directly, and in this case, it was not an intended reference. The fail message for the TV broadcast reads, "It's a good show, Brant," which is referencing the meme, "They're good dogs, Brent," that spawned from a dog-rating Twitter account. This SAM turret surface-to-air missile is somewhat generic, but it does seem to look most like these ones from Just Cause 2. There are other SAM turrets in that game that do not look like this one, but these two are quite similar. Charles swooping down for his helicopter high five may be a reference to the popular drowning hand high five image. It's just a silly little unexpected moment in a webcomic, and it makes for a funny sight gag here during this fail. It's a gag in part 5 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to have characters named after Italian foods. So having that occur here in the Stickmin series is kind of a layered joke, with completing the mission being the 5th part of the full Stickmin story. You know, if we call Breaking the Bank kind of part 0 as the prologue. The fail text for the light speed option reads, "You forgot to hold on to your butts," which is a play on a line spoken by Samuel L. Jackson in Jurassic Park.
Hold on to your butts.
Charles sings while crawling through the vents, which includes rewritten lyrics of a Linkin Park song, Crawling. With the Cabbits character being a part of the fusion fail, it could just be a generally sane-sounding name, but is likely meant to either be a combination of the Dragon Ball characters Kakarot and Raditz becoming Cabbits, or building off the way that Saiyans were named using veggie puns. Kakarot was carrot, Vegeta vegetable, Raditz radish, Broly broccoli. So with that in mind, Cabbits could be a play off cabbage. The hot knife borders on being overly generic, but it could be a reference to either the 1000-degree knife viral videos, or possibly the Thermoblade from Subnautica. But beyond this, it's a bit of a callback to infiltrating the airship. The knife pops out of an earpiece, same as the Force gun, with Charles saying nearly the same thing to prompt Henry.
Hey, there's a button on your earpiece. You should press it. Hey, you feel that button there on your helmet? Go ahead and press that.
Sven Svensson is actually the name of PewDiePie's dog in his Minecraft playthrough. The two characters even have matching blue and yellow based designs, which is a color combination that's obviously meant to be tied to the Swedish flag, matching PewDiePie's own heritage. Many thought that perhaps Sven Svensson was a guest appearance from YouTuber Killian Experience. Sven is, however, once again voiced by Puff. His voice acting has just gotten that good over the years.
Wait a minute, I know you. You're the guy that arrested the airship division, and now you're here to bring down the rest of us.
Cool Joe may be referencing Snoopy's character Joe Cool from the Peanuts comics. That's a loose connection, and separately, his bio specifies that he's returned from the wall, confirming Cool Joe and Mr. Cool are one and the same. The air cannon that drifts Henry along in a slow-moving bubble of air appears to match those seen in Super Mario Galaxy. Charles comments he hasn't quite figured out how to move it along faster yet, while in Mario, we would use the Wii remote to blow air and push it along. Seemingly that tech doesn't have a Stickmin equivalent yet. Gadget Gabe's review of the Suck Pack claims it certainly does suck, which is a reference to the Suck Cut from Wayne's World, another vacuum-like tool, with this one being made to cut hair, with Wayne saying this exact line.
Prepared to give a complete demonstration. As you can see, it sucks as it cuts. It certainly does suck.
Gus Brix's bio includes the line, "Hit the bricks, pal, you're done," which is a line from the Team Fortress 2 scout used when dominating another scout.
Hit the bricks, pal, you're done.
There's a running joke with Charles shooting Henry, whether it be directly or not. He also did so previously with a sniper in Fleeing the Complex, and again before that with a machine gun in Infiltrating the Airship. This has never been confirmed, but the jewels at the top of the cleaned them out screen are likely a Match 3 game reference, seeing as none of these are organized in a way that would create a chain of 3 and thus clear out the jewels. It could just be generic decorative gems up on the wall, but to me it feels like a sort of copyright-friendly version of Bejeweled, one of the OG Match 3 games. I originally overlooked Beam Aboard as a reference because it felt like a sort of generic sci-fi tech thing, despite similarities to Star Trek's Beaming Aboard. That is, until I learned that "Beam me up, Scotty" is a common misquotation. Similar to "Luke, I am your father." That's not actually what the line was originally.
No, I am your father.
Puff may have been going more literal rather than the pop culture reference route, as Kirk usually said simple variations of "beam me aboard."
Beam me aboard.
Which matches much more closely with the prompt of "beam aboard." Interestingly, this effect also looks to be the same beam shown to be used in the opening part of Valiant Hero when Charles and Henry reconnect. It may not be the same ship, but it appears to be the same tech. Valiant Hero's ending falls into a bit of cliché territory, with someone heroically sacrificing themselves to save the other while they drift away unable to help. For example, it's very similar to Loaderbot's sacrifice in Tales from the Borderlands Episode 5. But there is an example that's much closer in its overall presentation. So I think if this is an intended reference, it is most likely to Chris Redfield's ending in Resident Evil 6. While that one actually takes place underwater, it still plays out very closely, slowly drifting away from the destruction. "Rub some butter on it" may be a reference to the music video "Rub Some Bacon on It" from Rhett and Link. There's not a lot that points to that, but I really miss when Rhett and Link made music, so I dare to dream that that was an intended reference. When the Minecraft diamond block is seen, it appears to use the game's original texture from before the Village and Pillage update. That could make some sense considering how long the Stickmin Collection was in production. Maybe at the time Puff drew it, that was how it still looked in-game. The Magician's bio is a reference to a character from Germa Rumble live action, which featured a wrestler who pulled his opponent's organs out of a hat, directly matching the name and bio of this Top App member. While having everyone start dancing at the drop is done in a way that matches the Harlem Shake, the actual build-up and beat sound much more similar to Lil Jon's Turn Down for What. Marcus Blabbird shares his first name with the series creator Puffballs, and Blabbird is Swedish for bluebird, which maybe Puff has a thing for bluebirds, as we saw in the flute option. I'm Canadian, so I can relate to that. But beyond simply the first name, what really ties this character to Puff is kind of a random inside joke. This bio uses the odd fractured speech patterns of Yoda, and is something Puff added to this character after randomly doing a goofy Yoda impression on one of his Twitch streams. This is less of a reference and just kind of a strange visual gag, but for some reason the EMP is hooked up to what appears to be just giant Duracell batteries. Sure, they need a power source, but I have no idea why Puff chose to do this specifically. It seems like the sort of thing he maybe would have done just to make himself laugh. I enjoy the use of the heist movie trope of explaining plans. Detailed plans always go awry in a heist movie, forcing them to adapt. Meanwhile, the points left untold go off without a hitch. Both Ellie and Charles's plans go wrong, essentially because we heard the explanation. Here, we never hear Henry's plan, and it ends up being the one that works. This is true of dozens of examples of heist movies. Lars Green was named for Lars Fillmore from the Futurama film Bender's Big Score. There's nothing really pointing to this other than his stubbly goatee and having a wife with a ponytail. We only know this because Puff explicitly stated it in his own developer commentary. Meanwhile, his wife, Elizabeth Green, who shares an exact name down to the spelling with a character from the 2009 game Prototype, doesn't really have anything drawing a line to that being an actual reference. While I previously covered the disguise kit being lifted straight from Team Fortress 2, I did miss that the fail text, "Oh, that's very convincing," is a direct quote from the Machinima Team Fortress 2 animation Team Fabulous 2.
Why don't we just give up, partner?
That's very convincing.
When using Super Henry, he does the Insta-Shield seen in the Sonic series. That can be used both offensively and defensively. Obviously, it doesn't do any good against this insanely large point-blank super laser. I really don't think it would have done any good even if Henry's timing were better. And while the disintegration of Henry himself looks like 100 different animes, I've seen it suggested that it could be more directly intended to be Galim's laser in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. When Henry whacks the sniper round back with his hammer, it launches the bullet off into the distance, eventually hitting the mountain with a soft thud, including a hit marker to confirm impact. Hit markers are a staple of many shooting games, but this one seems to most closely resemble the sound and marker combo from Call of Duty. The option to use the emerald offensively seems to be a small callback to stealing the diamond when Henry took out Cliff Nux by dropping the diamond on him. However, here, he has no means to properly move and drop this weighty gem. Certainly a lot more difficult when you're lacking that higher ground. That's me tying in a reference, that's not implied in the game in any way. The Stickmin Space Resort is a QuickTime event-only route, just like Intruder on a Scooter in Stealing the Diamond. So the fail text at the start of this completing the mission route, "Off to a good start," is a callback to very similar text at the start of the prior QuickTime-only route, which also appeared when you time out the first choice. Wow, you're off to a great start. At the end of Free Man, the escape pod taken by Henry appears to be the absolutely safe pod from Mother 3, although I don't think they're quite close enough for me to call that a direct reference. The list of needle puns after the needle fail is a mini callback to the pun list during the electrocution section in Infiltrating the Airship. Mr. Macbeth's theme is titled Tickets Please. It is very similar to the structure and style of Undertale's Metal Crusher. And true to the layered and often remixed soundtrack use in Undertale, Tickets Please is a remix of another Stickmin song. This is the Top At clan theme, and as an example, here's how it was heard in Infiltrating the Airship. The Melt Ray gun melting itself when used is a reference to a similar gag when Duck Dodgers uses his disintegration pistol. Right Hand Man bursting out of the dog pile has been pitched in the comments as potentially being Neo bursting out from under the Agent Smiths, or Tetsuo from under the doctors in Akira, or Senator Armstrong in Metal Gear Rising. But when asked, Puff shared, "I tend to make it more clear if it's an actual reference, and since nothing there really called for the Matrix, it's more of a generic moment." Which is why I usually try to find deeper connections in these references, either literally or thematically. Puff is just usually a little more on the nose with these inclusions. Back when we used the command melody in Fleeing the Complex, the fail text was, "Too bad you don't know how to play like an ocarina or something." Now here we have the great little payoff of the successful option being the ocarina. Charles's song is similar to Epona's in the sense that they're both used to summon a character. A lot of people suggested that this is a reworking of Charles' Greatest Plan song.
This is the greatest plan.
I felt that if I really strained my hearing, maybe I could hear the similarity.
This is the greatest plan.
They are both 6 notes long, specifically holding that final note.
This is the greatest plan.
But I had to go asking, and unfortunately there wasn't an intentional connection between those two. Similarly, a lot of people pointed to similarities between a tune in Valiant Hero and Charles's song.
This is the greatest plan.
Could say it was the greatest.
But we have no real confirmation on that one. The codenames of Frog, as well as the undercover agents Eel and Turtle, could be a reference to the Foxhound members in the Metal Gear series, all naming themselves after animals. Normally, I'd think that's a generic trope of picking your own codename, but pretty well the entire Master Bounty Hunter route is all a bunch of Metal Gear references, so I more readily buy that one. There's this great gag in the right-hand man fight when Henry is positioned on the solar panels. When you do fire missiles, there is a lengthy fail text describing a precise set of instructions needed. However, if you time out this QuickTime event instead, you are accosted for wasting time attempting to read instructions. Which one is it, game? It's a real lose-lose there, isn't it? When Henry is being held captive, his hands are bound in place by these electrified cuffs, suspending him in a way that feels very similar to when Syndrome is holding Mr. Incredible captive. The shape of them, the kind of green electricity, the way Henry tries to break free, it all feels very similar to that scene. The sound that plays when hovering over the dance-off option is a little part of the main theme from Inner Sloth's first game, Dig to China. This is an iffy one for me, but it came up quite frequently and I think the comments sort of convinced me. It seems like the way Henry and Ellie are leaned back with the Capital Gains title having stock tracking lines integrated into the letters could be intended to reference the stonks meme. I want to believe that's the case because I think stonks are just kind of hilarious. The scene of Right-Hand Man KOing Henry is obviously a Smash reference, but there's an extra detail I missed before. Henry's helmet instantly cracking is done in a way that matches Olimar's helmet cracking when he gets KO'd in Ultimate. I have no idea how I missed this one, as it's such an insane and wonderful recurring gag in the series. During the Capital Gains credits, there is another shoop-de-whoop hidden in the sun. The underbarrel grenade launcher comes with the text, "Who brings a grenade launcher onto a space station?" There's nothing readily apparent in this one, but Puff shared in his commentary track that this was inspired by 2018's Aquaman movie. In one of the opening scenes on the submarine, a grenade launcher is used, to which Puff thought to himself, who brings a grenade launcher onto a submarine? Swap out submarine for space station, and that's how we got this fail text. I've found it's easy to overlook things that reference real life. They're just not usually as readily identifiable as something that flashily ties in a video game or pop culture. But the little icon when you hover over style on him has a little stick person doing a dab. That one should have been easy to catch. Considering the incredibly high popularity of Marvel movies and comics, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that Top Hat Civil Warfare is likely a Marvel Civil War reference. I kind of left it out because it felt like, Civil Wars are a real world thing, but considering the way the two cartoonish sides are clashing, it's likely tied to that. If you enjoy the depth with which I cover things on this channel, and you like comic book movies, then I'm going to include a link in the corner here for you to check out my comic book movie reviews. I'm currently working my way through the Infinity Saga, and have been having a lot of fun doing it. In the Sims scene, Floyd specifically throws a fit because his path is blocked. The Simlish here is nearly identical to what Sims would use in that actual context. But even beyond that, accurate to Sims gameplay, when a Sim cannot complete a given path or action, they resume what they were previously doing before they were told otherwise, which here would be drawing a gun to shoot Henry. While being carried away by a bird comes from a link to the past, we have some musical reference blending here, as Henry instead plays the Warp Whistle song from Super Mario Bros. 3. After these three are tossed off the Jeep, we have the fail text, "Seatbelts everyone," which is a Miss Frizzle quote from the Magic School Bus.
Seatbelts everyone!
Super Punch feels like it would be a One Punch Man reference, but Puff was watching a lot of My Hero Academia at the time and specifically studied their impact frames to get the look just right. It's also why the fail reads, "The Top Hats will always remember you as a hero." The cluster charge is taken from Rainbow Six Siege, as used by the operator Fuse. The fuse in Rainbow Six is Russian, and on the cluster charge here, we have the Russian word Zalozhnik, which translates to hostage. This is a gag based on the fact that in Rainbow Six Siege, the fuse most often ends up killing the in-game hostages. On this board, there is a button that looks like a heart with two holes, but given the context of the fail itself, we can determine that it's a silhouette of a more simplified Majora's Mask. The way Right Hand Man shoots his hand away into Henry's face and calling it back could be a reference to Mega Man's Mega Arm, also known as his Rockin' Arm, first seen in Mega Man 5. The baseball bat could be a reference to Metal Bat from One Punch Man. Many have said it's Ness, the way you're able to knock back a projectile. I've also heard Lethal League. There's a lot of potential references. You could even say it's the Scout's bat from Team Fortress 2. Nothing about it is made overly specific. The song that plays during this massive epic battle with Right Hand Man is Da Vinci Overdrive, named in reference to Mona Lisa Overdrive from The Matrix. Da Vinci, Mona Lisa, they just kind of tie that together. The songs even have pretty similar sounding themes. When Henry attempts to absorb, after exploding, his legs fall to the ground, kind of like they do towards the beginning of Toy Story 2 when Buzz is blown up. But I think that one's coincidental. Especially when we see it once again with Right Hand Man and the Wombo combo. I think it's just kind of a flashy way to kill off a character. My weak anime familiarity is showing, as there was plenty of added details in this JoJo-like fight that went over my head. The Sands of Time spirit possessed by the Right-Hand Man is similar to Dio Brando's stand The World, with his time manipulation abilities. I love the nod to the naming tweaks being made for JoJo localizations. Right-Hand Man declares it is the time in a bottle, while the subtitles read Bottled Time. Names are often changed to avoid copyright issues in other regions due to all of the literal naming references, like Time in a Bottle being the name of a Jim Croce song. From part 4 of JoJo and onward, the stands are all named as references to songs, albums, or bands. Heavily using references and tweaking them for distribution is something the Stickmin series would know all too well. On the other hand, the left one, I guess, is Henry's spirit, reference, or tribute, which layers together elements of Dio's stand The World, Giorno's Gold Experience, and Valentine's Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. The way reference shouts failure over and over is much like Dio or Giorno shouting muda, which means useless, futile. Flipping it to then be an internal reference to the use of fails in the Stickmin series. And again, Right Hand Man says tribute, but we're shown the subtitle reference. That actual name would be a reference to the Tenacious D song Tribute. So in other words, reference's name is tribute as a reference to tribute. Yeah, you heard me. When Henry gets pushed out of the chopper on a package, he appears to ride down on a Killstreak care package from Call of Duty. Chaos Contained could be a reference to Shadow from the Sonic franchise and his iconic Chaos Control, in which he commonly manipulates time. I'm uncertain. I think Puff would have just said it straight up in this context if it was intended. However, he might have put that little twist on it to better match with this series' own CCC, the Center for Chaos Containment. The opening of Revenged is much like Metal Gear 5 Phantom Pain, which opens with a doctor reconstructing Snake, waking up bandaged and with cybernetic enhancements. Although I think it's kind of a common scene in anything that involves a person being rebuilt, like Deus Ex. As the car slams on its brakes, Right Hand Man jumps to attention and poses like Buzz Lightyear's defensive pose when he gets startled. Right Hand Man defeated, popping up on screen, could be a reference to No More Heroes 2, where every time you defeat a boss or assassin, their name and dead pop up on screen. A small detail best seen during Dual Tech, it might not be intentional, but in the background on the left you can see a soldier and Top Hat member fighting like Rock'em Sock'em robots. It was maybe done just as a simple animation loop to fill in some background details, but I love that possible tie-in. I used to have a pair of Rock'em Sock'em robots that were Batman and Mr. Freeze, and I just loved them. I was positive I included this one in the original video. It was probably a victim of some janky editing, whether that be when I was putting together the audio or the video, because it definitely exists in my scripting and planning for this series. This eye-patched man in the back of the bar is named Travis de Groot, named for and designed to look like Tavish de Groot, the demo man from Team Fortress 2. His bio references the use of explosives and roasts the way Team Fortress 2 is no longer updated on the regular. When dropping Reginald off the ship, he lands safely with the use of a hat parachute. The fail text comments on his hat receiving some upgrades. This is a callback to a fail in infiltrating the airship where Henry accidentally drops Reginald while parachuting. Now he has this backup for just such an occasion. At the end of Top Hat for Life, in the bottom right, we briefly see the two guys who placed a bet at the start of the route, with the loser paying up what he owed. And there, Finally, we've covered all of the references in the Henry Stickmin series. I wouldn't doubt that there's one or two deeply buried, hyper-specific, crazy, obscure things that were still possibly missed, but I don't think you'll find a more comprehensive list anywhere else. So I still stand by this series very proudly. Don't forget to wishlist Repella Fella over on Steam. It helps me and the channel out immensely, as well as supporting a talented indie developer. Someday when I feel motivated and have the time, I want to recut and re-edit all of these to exist together in one giant video, just because it would be funny to have all the references in one place like that. Plus I can cut out anything that feels repetitious when merging in these missed references. It's been a hell of a journey. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you to Fruz for the help editing. Thank you to all the patrons for their continued support, and I hope to see you all again soon.